All right, folks, we'll be on in just a second. Just want to make sure we're properly broadcasting here on both. Uh, YouTube seems fine right now. Facebook seems fine right now. And X seems fine right now. So let me hit the save button and we will. Here's a quick look at our agenda. We're going to be highlighting wrestling today. We've got our special guest. All of our guests are special, but our special guest today is Hawks wrestling coach Pete Rogers. We're going to talk about wrestling. They're going to move on to the championship in Greensboro. Had a very nice evening last night at Seaforth. Then also want to let folks know you will be able to see videos of that on our YouTube channel. Then, of course, we'll go into basketball. And a paper comes out. The Chatham News and Record comes out every Thursday. Ashiba will go into what stories he's got in there. And the Athlete of the Week does also a little bit on swimming and indoor track. And with that, let me get rid of the screen and get these gentlemen on board. And there you should be all good now. All right, gentlemen, hold on here for a sec. Let me just make sure. Yep. All right. Ashibo and Coach, go at it.
Everyone, we got Pete Rogers here, assistant coach with the Seaforth wrestling team. And Coach, we were just with you last night. You guys advanced to the state championship for the second year in a row. And you guys built this program from the ground up. Now 2 straight dual team state championship appearances. So just want to start off with that. And what's that feeling like for you guys?
It's pretty exciting just to see them kind of come into their own and really start like believing that they're kind of as good as what they are. I guess last year was probably a little bit of a surprise to me that they got to that level that quick. I thought maybe this year, in my head when we started this thing, I thought, you know what, maybe by the time these guys are seniors, we could have a really good team. And they kind of jumped ahead of themselves. So that's kind of exciting because that usually doesn't happen. Usually it's the opposite.
Yeah, they had the tough loss in this round in the state championship last year. And then I know you guys put it in your heads like, hey, we want to get back here and then we want to finish the job. So RS Central, I'm not sure if you guys have looked at them too much, but can you kind of give us a little bit of a preview of what you guys are looking to, try to do against that opponent on Saturday?
Yeah, they're I kind of knew they'd be coming on. They were returning a bunch of guys and some guys that were injured last year at the end of the year. They didn't really have all their guys in that, that they wanted to have. So I kind of knew that this was kind of going to be their year, that they were going to try and make a run at it. Even talking to the coach at one of the Super 32 tournament out in Greensboro, he's like picking my brain. Hey, what you guys been doing all summer? I'm like, hey, mind your own business, No, it was good. It was fun, but I could tell that he had it in his mind that he was trying to figure out where the heck we were at,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And like you said, you wanted to talk about your passion for wrestling because we know you have an extensive background in wrestling, been to the top, the biggest levels collegiately on a high school level, as a coach and as a wrestler yourself in college. So I just want to ask you, growing up in Big Ten country from Wisconsin, went to Ohio State, coached at Purdue. What's that like coming up in that environment in such a very, very good wrestling area that you grew up in?
I was very fortunate. I had wrestling up in the Midwest. How do I explain it? Down here, there's a lot of incredibly good athletes that don't understand that wrestling is an option, where up there, it's always on the table, So like you grow up in a wrestling family like I did. I was the youngest of 11. I had 5 older brothers that wrestled. So my natural thing was to get into wrestling. That was a game we played at home. We did every sport. Don't get me wrong. That was the era where you did everything, 4 sports a season, summer baseball, football. But wrestling was kind of my passion. Just kind of, it was a game we played. I'd come home and my brothers were all way older than me. And they'd wrestle with me in the living room. And that's kind of where I started. So instead of begging them to go outside and play football, we'd wrestle in the living room, you know. Although we did the football thing as well, but when wrestling season rolled down, it was wrestling time, you know. I guess that's probably the difference of what I did notice, which was really surprising to me when I moved down here. It would have been 5 years ago. I'd got out of coaching at Purdue. No, it's not 5 years anymore. My gosh, closer to 10. I don't know how long we've been here, but they were. I didn't know much about North Carolina wrestling, and what I've come to find is that they start out late, but there are just so many athletes down here. They're able to get good really quick. And with NC State and UNC and Campbell and Duke and all these other programs shelling out like good high-level wrestlers, they're sticking around in the high schools and coaching, and it's just kind of raising the level of North Carolina. So North Carolina is a real up-and-coming state in this sport. If we can get some of the kids to realize it earlier, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like you said, you realize, you know, you want to be a wrestler early just from having being in that environment with your family. I mean, at what point in wrestling as a kid did you realize, you know, you really loved it and you could take this wrestling on into doing great things in high school and college and beyond that?
Well, that was kind of the cool thing because there, for me, like growing up, there wasn't any expectations except for right here, right now. The goals were like, hey, Pete, what do you want to do? What do you want to come? I mean, we didn't even talk about it. I remember getting into high school and my brother was one of my older brothers was my wrestling coach, and two of my other older brothers were the assistant coaches. It was a terrible program. It wasn't a very good program when they first started, but then it grew into a really good one. But my brother came into practice the first day. He's like, hey, guy, or hey, Pete. He said it specifically to me. I want you to write down your goal. I was like, huh. He's like, write it down and put it in your locker. I heard it's something that you're supposed to do, you know? And I thought, okay, yeah, he's probably right. So I ripped it out of a piece of a notebook paper. It still had those fridgy edges. And I wrote down my goal. I'd been to the state tournament as a kid watching it. I was like, hey, you know what? It would be really sweet to be wrestling in the finals when everybody's watching you, you know? So I wrote down that goal in terrible handwriting. I stuck it in my locker and I looked at it every day. It was state finalist, you know? And, you know, unfortunately, that's what I became, was a state finalist. I ended up losing in the state finals to Trevor Hassenjager from Sebastopol. But it was still pretty cool, you know, the power of that goal. So then I kind of like continued writing that. Obviously thought, you know what, when I set my goals, I want to set a goal that is something that I'm actually going to be happy with when I get to it. So kind of changed things there. So, but every year was year by year. As a sophomore in high school, my athletic director came to me and said, like, hey, Pete, you know what, you probably need to get your grades up because I think you have an opportunity here. I was like, the Rogers, when we got out of high school, we worked and it was great. You know, that's what I had planned to do. When I got done, I was going to go out and work. I didn't have any ambitions to go into college. But she caught me early and it got me thinking. And I went to some camps with some high level wrestlers over the summer. And I was like, you know what? And I saw their highlight videos. I was like, man, you know what? I would love to be on one of those things. Maybe she's right. Maybe I do got to keep up my grades. And you know what? I wouldn't mind being a physical education teacher, you know? So that's kind of, I started getting my grades up, got in a situation where I could get into a college, and kind of went on from there. So it's kind of, I'm glad that my athletic director caught me at that young age to kind of encourage me to do that. And my family was super supportive. They didn't know much about it. They actually just were like, you know what, go on the college visit on your own and see what you like, because it's your future. It's not ours. We don't want to like get into your, we don't want to have you influenced by what we're feeling. So just go to these places and check them out and let us know what you're going to do. So that's what I did.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you go from high school to Ohio State, like I said, Big Ten, wrestling. I mean, what was that experience like? And what was it like for you as a freshman coming in, making that transition? And how did that college experience kind of deepen your passion for wrestling?
Yeah. So college wrestling, like I'd see like little clips, like they didn't have the whole national tournament on TV, but I'd see clips of it. And in high school, I'd look at those clips and I'd watch my weight class. I'd be like, oh, I could beat those guys, right? I never wrestled anybody good, like that good. Just figured it. But my first few months in the wrestling room were like, oh my gosh, I got my tail whooped by some men. And after that first month, and I redshirted my freshman year, it was like, hey, I got to figure this out, or I can't do it because I can't get beat up. Because, you know, wrestling's a physical sport, right? It's not like somebody's scoring on you, like, you know, it's somebody's kicking your butt, you know, like bad. So it was like either I got to adjust and get tough and figure this out, or I got to get the heck out of here because I can't do this for 5 years, you know? So was lucky. I was raised in a family that was like, hey, you know, it wasn't even an option in my head. The quitting was never an option in my head. It wasn't a thought that I didn't even think you could do it, you know? Didn't think that was part of the, even an option on the table. So I had to get tough and figure it out. And, you know, it took me a little bit to get adjusted. I would say my first 2 years, I wrestled varsity. I redshirted, then wrestled varsity my next 2 years. And then I, you know, wrestled the number one guy in the country and lose by a point. And I'd wrestle some average dude from who knows where and lose to him by a point. And I just couldn't get it all together. But then by junior, senior year, I was like heading in the right direction and ranked and beating great people. And it never turned. I never got that All-American thing that I wanted, but I definitely beat the best guys in the country when it didn't count.
Yeah. Yeah. It did. Also want to ask, I mean, with your time at Ohio State, because I know you went on and coached college as well and became a successful college coach. And I mean, who are some of the people either from high school or, you know, in college that kind of helped you realize, hey, coaching might be the way I want to, you know, go about continuing wrestling after you got done playing?
Yeah. So number one, in high school, my brother, I mean, I like, it actually going to make me get like almost a little emotional because he had a high school wrestling experience, right? Like he qualified for a Wisconsin state tournament and lost and didn't even get on the podium. But for some reason, he knew how to like motivate kids to get to that next level, to get even further than maybe they thought they could get. Which is like incredible when you haven't been there before yourself. It didn't matter who I was wrestling, where I was wrestling them, or what I was doing. He 100% believed that I was going to get it done. And I could feel it like deep down. And I feel like that was like, hey, you know what? I want to be that guy for somebody, you know? So he did a great job. He coached 4 Division I athletes in that small. I graduated with like 62 kids. You know, it was a real small town. So to have that many really tough kids come out of a place like that where no Division I athletes come out of was a pretty cool thing. So that was part of it. And then when I got to college, I had a guy by the name of Russ Hellickson. He was originally a Wisconsin native, and he was Olympic silver medalist. beat everybody in the world. His last 3 years wrestling in the world, was on the 1980 Olympic team, which of course we know got boycotted. And he was like, that kind of put an end to his run. By the time by the time that Olympic cycle was done, he was kind of past the point where he was competing. He kind of needed to move on with his life. It wasn't the time of the life where athletes made any money. He was starving in order to chase his dream, but him as a coach, the coolest thing about him, yes, he was a Division I coach at a very successful program, but he cared about the kids. Our well-being is important or more important than winning. Like, he put you through hell, like physically, made you go to different places, dark areas that you didn't know existed. But as far as a person, he was there to pick you up, and make you a better person, kind of make you a man, So having those two type of people being my major influences, and I've had other great coaches. I have other people along the way, in other sports that coach me. But those two guys, man, they got it, because the wrestling was huge and it was important, but it was more about the character and everything else and the type of person that you are after, which is incredible, especially in, we're in an age, things change, but I hope that, I guess for me, the coaching is far less about the wins and losses and way more about these guys having an experience that they become better people out of. And I know it's going to be hard, because in this sport, we demand an incredible amount out of them, physically and mentally. And it's so scary going out there and, hey, you step out onto that mat with one other person, there's nobody to blame but you. And that's like an intimidating, humbling thing. So we're training these guys to be able to step up into those positions to do that. It's exciting to see them accomplish great things, because it's so gratifying, I guess I would say, when I got out of coaching, one of my friends, Johnny Johnson, who coached at Stevens Point, wrestled at Oklahoma, he said to me, "Hey, Pete, you can't get out of this, man." He's like, "You're a roller coaster rider just like me." And I never really thought about it. But I was like, you know what? He's exactly right. Well, even as an athlete or as a coach, wrestling's like, your highs are better than anything in the world, and your lows are like worse than anything in the world, because it's you. It's your fault. It's your fault when you win. It's your fault when you lose, So kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. And then, you take what you learn from those guys and your experiences. You go to Lakeland, build a Hall of Fame career there, bringing their program up. Just what did you kind of learn about yourself as a coach during that time at Lakeland? And what are some things that also kind of brought your attention back to your passions with wrestling and making sure other kids feel that same way about the sport?
Yeah, I just tried to take a lot of what I learned from it. Wasn't trying to take away. When I first started, I'll back it up. When I first started coaching there, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I knew how to wrestle, and that was it. As far as running a practice and organizing a team, I didn't know how to do that. I got hired as a coach the first time the athletic director tried to hire me. I had just graduated from Ohio State, and she said, "Hey, are we there?"
I'm still here. I don't know if Gene.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm still here.
I scared I was all alone. I was nervous. So she asked me to if I would be interested in coaching the team, and I was like, I don't think so. I kind of wasn't what I was thinking. I wanted to be a high school coach. I wanted to teach and do that thing. Well, fast forward a couple months, life changed, and I was like, hey, you know what? is that job still open? And this was right in the beginning of September, just before school started. And I was basically the same age as a lot of the athletes that I was coaching, 1 year older maybe. And so I'd go in there and I wrestled with them, and I was probably way too hard on a lot of them and kind of drove a lot of them away. And I guess the one thing I knew is I wanted to win. I don't want to keep losing. So I had to figure out the recruiting thing. I asked a lot of questions, and I had a lot of people to help me along the way, from my college coach to my brothers, my family that all live back in Wisconsin, and the other coaches on the staff. And they kind of helped me start bringing people in. And then as far as like the culture, it was always, I took a lot of what my prior coaches had done, and the way they carried themselves. And that's the way I tried to kind of mimic, I guess, that, what, if you care about the guys and you put your whole heart and soul into them, the rest of the stuff will fall into place. And that's kind of what fortunately happened. We brought some kids in. They had some success. We struggled for a while. But once we got it rolling, we started having people want to go to school there. And then I started toning it down on realizing that I can make them really work hard. And I don't have to be crazy, but I just have to have them think that they're working harder than anybody else in the country. They don't have to be. They just have to think they are, So that kind of helped keep more kids around and kind of build a team that was going to win some matches, And so that's what we did there at Lakeland, and went on and turned out to be a pretty cool experience for a lot of them. They accomplished some pretty great things and brought Lakeland College was a small school in the middle of the farm fields in Wisconsin. The closest town was 10 miles away. And, it was kind of cool to get them on the national stage, and it was just because we had a couple of guys that bought into it and believed and made it happen, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And you coached, athletes at Lakeland, you coached them once again back in Big Ten at Purdue, and then back here at high school. Is there a difference in trying to get the best out of kids between college and high school in your experience?
No, I think one thing is, as I got older, sometimes I'd be like, man, I'd like to go back to college and use some of the brains that I have now compared to what I had back then. Seems like when you're younger, you use a lot more physical, like everything's physical, right? And then as you get older, you start to think a little bit. And I think that kind of the same thing rings true is with wrestling. It's a very hard, demanding sport, and you got to ride that line between pushing them too hard and not, because you got to be physically ready, but you don't always have to. I think sometimes people will run them down and break them down, whereas you can have them thinking that they're busting their tail harder than anybody has. And if they think that, then it's the truth, Sometimes if you think something, it's true. Yeah, I think just every level you go to, I think it was just like toning it down a notch, like as far as the physical demands of the sport. And I think that's why you're able, I guess that's the difference between high school and college. It's just the demands of how hard you push them. But you know what? People always say, like, this day and age, people just don't want to work. They want to work. They just don't know how to go about doing it, And these guys, once you get them bought in, once you earn their trust, I feel like you can have them do anything. They're willing to do anything you ask them to do, And I think that I guess it's different, but it's all kind of the same, you know?
Yeah. And then I also want to ask you, I mean, you coach other kids, but now you got your son Gabe, you know, who's working his way to be one of the best in the state in his weight class here in North Carolina. I mean, what's it like taking what you've done coaching wise and your experiences and then putting it into your son and bringing him up as, you know, to be the best that he can be?
Super stressful. Super stressful. No, it's like the best, you know, to see. He didn't get started till 6th grade or 7th grade. I take him to camps, and he'd all day, like I'd be running camps at Purdue or wherever I was coaching at the time, and he would be like nervous to go out there. But then on the way home, he'd be like, "Hey, Daddy, when we get home, we want to wrestle." You know, it's like, dude, we were just there all day long, and you could have wrestled, but we'd do it. So it was like kind of did it the way my brothers did it with me. I started younger competing, but it was the game we played. It was fun, you know. And to see him go through this process, and when you start out late in wrestling, it's always like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But the ultimate, you know, with where he wants to get in this thing, I think it's a great way to do it for him, because he's had to deal with that adversity of losing, where sometimes, like somebody like me who started young and has been fortunate to have success throughout, because I had started young and been able to take it, you know, kind of been used to being successful, and then you all of a sudden reach a level when you get to college where all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is the level now, you know. It's not going to be a surprise. It's not a surprise to him, because he's had to face those losses, and he's able to bounce back and, okay, what do I need to work on for next time? So I feel like his route is a very good one. Although it comes with a little bit more pain early on, the ultimate success, you know, later on in life, I think he's in a great situation for that. So I think you know, it's an absolute joy to be able to have the opportunity to sit in his corner and see him try and accomplish something great and move on to that next level and try and do something great there. So
yeah. And then just kind of last question about, you know, just your experience coaching. I mean, when you coach these kids, high school and college level, I mean, what's the biggest thing you want them to take out of the sport of wrestling, whether that's something they take into furthering their wrestling career or just something they take into life in general?
Yeah. I want them to be able to know what it feels like to put everything into something. And I guess when you truly do that, when you really set your goals high and you put everything you have into something, there's always a risk of disappointment at the end. But that disappointment helps you grow as a person. There's a lot of people that are afraid to take those risks, because you know what? You put it all on the line. You put in a hard summer of work. You train your butt off all year. You don't know what the result's going to be. And a lot of people are afraid. I mean, that's why there's so few great people. I mean, people are afraid of that, you know, mentally. It's somewhere in the back of their mind, don't give so much into it because the result's uncertain. But I think putting it on the line and realizing that, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the very best I possibly can and leave it all on the mat or on the court or whatever sport you're doing. And there's a chance of failure. I think that builds your character for later on, because that's life, right? I mean, life in general is like, it's uncertain. You're going to try as hard as you can all the time, but you're going to fall short at times. But if you're constantly holding back because you don't want to fail, you're scared of failing, I think you're destined for a life of being average, right? So I guess my goal for these guys on the team is that, hey, you know what? Even if you don't win a state championship, that's not the ultimate goal here. The ultimate goal is to try and make you a better, tougher, more resilient person. And I think that's what the sport, and all sports done in the right way, I think that's what it teaches you, The result, I think we put a lot of emphasis on the results of things sometimes rather than what you're going to put into it. I mean, I think back to all the guys that I coached over the years and have had the opportunity to. It's not always the guy who wins the national championship or see. It's the guys that like fought through things and brought it every single day. Those are the guys I remember. I mean, the other stuff, and maybe that's why I feel like I'm maybe a little better coach now than what I used to be, because I realize that it's still just a sport, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We're trying for something bigger, We want you to be a good person. We want you to be able to stick with your marriage someday, We want you to be able to, deal with it when you lose a loved one, that kind of thing. That's what's important, and I feel like that's what we're trying to teach in the sport of wrestling, or in our culture and our team. That like, hey, you know what? This is great. We want you to be the very best you can be, and you better try to be the very best you can be, because that's what we expect. But if it doesn't turn out, you know what? It's just part of it, It's helping you in other ways,
All right, Coach. Hey, we've had you on for 30 minutes. Yesterday, we said we're going to take you for 30 minutes. However, would you mind staying on for about another 8-10 minutes? Because I want to talk about what's going on at Seaforth and what you're doing at Seaforth. Because, you won last night, which means you get to compete against on Saturday. And I think I got a picture here of the team from last night. Trying to bring that up for a second. There we go. Can you give us a quick rundown as to what you saw happen yesterday and what you see going into Saturdays? And again, I don't want to take up more than. Is it okay if we get you for another 8 minutes?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Why don't you talk about what happened yesterday? Who have you seen the biggest improvement in, and what do you see going into Saturday's competition? And before you start that, have you made your wrestlers at Seaforth write down their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Something we do every year. Yeah. They're a little more detailed than that little piece of scratch paper that I stuck in my locker, but yeah, we do. Yeah.
But they probably don't write it in cursive.
No, that is true. That is true. They definitely don't.
All right. Do you want to give us a rundown of how you felt last night's competition when you went up against two teams, won both of those, and then you're going into Saturday's competition? I think that's going to be at 2:00 if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So why don't you give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, I think it went really good. I felt like we wrestled hard, we wrestled tough. I think there was some places where we could have done better. I guess there always is, and every day. I guess, yeah, sometimes like as a coach, you kind of, pass over the like all the good stuff that happened, and then you get hung up on the things that, gosh, I wish that would have went a little better. But I think as a whole, we wrestled really well. I think we're like loose. I think the guys are happy, and I think they're flowing well. And I think there's a couple adjustments that we'll make in the next couple of days, and I think they're going to even be more ready for Saturday. At least that's the hope, right? Individually, man, we've had some guys really step it up here recently. Actually, all of them have. I guess one in particular, like Ben Johnson. I know he didn't finish that last match the way he would have liked it to, but man, he's really coming into his own and wrestling the way he's capable of. I always kind of knew he had it in him, but he's kind of looking like a different guy right now, being able to make adjustments and things while he's wrestling. So that's kind of exciting.
What's the biggest joy you've experienced coaching at Seaforth?
Man, I guess for me, it's like the day to day, like seeing people come in and go from one level to like a very high level. I guess like seeing somebody like Judge Lloyd or Harrison Compton who came in and, not to hurt their feelings, but weren't very good and went through the process and just became hammers by the time they're seniors. I think that's like my joy in wrestling is seeing people come from one level and getting to a level that they never knew existed before. That's probably it. Being able to hang out with my son through this experience and see him grow as a person and as a wrestler, and see that he's going to have opportunities to continue at the next level. That's super exciting. Lane Armstrong, making the kind of improvements he did and winning a state championships last year. I mean, all that, like all of it's, all of it's like joy that it just feels good to see people make improvements like that, and it's not even just the improvements, it's like the improvements all around, everybody, all these guys go through things during the season, and we're all human, we all make mistakes, but to make the adjustments after those mistakes, whether it be mistakes you make in life or mistakes you make on the mat, and be able to adjust and become a little bit better, because that stuff, all that stuff makes you feel really darn good when you see it, because I feel like these guys are doing really well and in a lot of aspects of their life, not just on the wrestling mat. It's pretty cool to see that.
All right, I got one last question. Why do you coach?
Yeah, because I don't know. I just like to see people. I like to see that person come from one level to the next, and things start to click for them. And I don't feel like there's many more rewarding things. People do a lot of. I guess for me, right now, I used to coach for my job, but I never felt like I was coaching. I never felt like it was my job. I felt like it was more of a different purpose to coach, and especially now, it's definitely not my job. Definitely not my job. It's just cool to be around these guys at this point in their life, and to see them strive for greatness. I love being around people that want to be great at something. What can be better than going into a wrestling room and being around a bunch of people that are willing to put their blood, sweat, and tears into something that become better at it. It's great. It's one of the greatest things to see, and I especially, and I don't know, people always say that kids have changed, and I'm sure they've said it when I was a kid and probably when you were a kid. Kids are different. They're not different. They are. We make them different maybe, but when it comes down to it, they have the same grit. They just it's a different way of getting that grit out of them, and trying to find the way to get that toughness and that fight. It's a challenge to try and figure that out, because everybody's clicks a little bit differently, and not like you, none of them are like me. None of them are like any of us, so trying to figure out what makes each one tick, that's fun, making me
all right. That was all I got. Shibo, you got anything else before we let Coach go? Because we got to get into some other Roundup stuff.
Oh no, yeah, that's all I've got as well. So yeah, we all good, Gene?
Yeah, we're all set, Coach. We're going to let you go. We usually average, since we've been inviting special guests, I think it's worked out. We usually average over 1,000 views. We don't. This live broadcast will probably have about 100, but most folks will watch it afterwards because some of them don't get to watch it from noon to 1. We appreciate you being on board. Hope you have good luck on Saturday. I know that's fun. Folks, if you have an opportunity to go out, I was out there last year. Sheba was out there last year. It's a high-charged, fun atmosphere, and it's worth going to because you're going to see the best athletes in the state competing. So, Coach, we will let you go. Again, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
We appreciate it.
Good luck
Take
Saturday.
care.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks.
All right, Ashibo. For you folks out there who enjoy wrestling, I think that was you learned a whole bunch about what drives it's that drive to excellence, I think. All right, let's get into let's talk about basketball because we're getting back to the regular end of season. There's some big games coming up. And Ashiba, why don't you give us a rundown of what's going on in the basketball world here in Chatham County?
Yeah, so starting with the boys, and just from this week, we had some pretty good week of games for the county teams. Northwood, they beat Graham 84-28 Tuesday night. Seaforth got a big win over Northmore 71-40, and in that one, Declan Lindquist 25 points. Chatham Central has had a pretty big week as well on the boys' side. They beat Cummings 63-58 in a close one a couple of days ago. In that one, we saw 18 point, 11 rebound, double from Brendan Oldham. And then biggest thing we saw was a 15 point, 11 rebound, and 11 assist triple-double from Reed Albright in that game to get the Bears over the top. And they followed that one up last night with a huge win over South Davidson, 82-47. And Brendan Oldham also had a great game in that one, 31 points and 13 rebounds. And then Chatham Charter, they won over Clover Garden earlier in the week, 50-39. Woods Charter, they took a tough loss to a really good Southern Wake Academy team to start the week, 81-35. But they bounced back with a big one over Ascend Leadership, 57-15. And shout out to Coach McNair and the Woods Charter Wolves. I mean, I think this is their best start to a season, I'm pretty sure, in school history. And really just doing a really good job of building off of that momentum from the first playoff appearance last year, and then turning into a winning season this year. And they've been competing at the top three of the Central Tar Heel 1A conference all year, going from 2 to 3, competing with Chatham Charter and of course Southern Wake at the top of that conference. But yeah, we got some good things going on in basketball this week. And then of course our power rankings are from last week's scores, of course, coming into this week's paper. So just for the week of January 27th, the power rankings were set at 6, Jordan Matthews, 5, Woods Charter, 4, Chatham Charter, 3, Seaforth, 2, Chatham Central, and 1, Northwood. So, Gene, what you think of the power rankings? Not too much has changed, like we said, throughout the year, because we're at that point at that point of the season where conference tournaments coming up, playoffs is coming up, and teams have a pretty good idea of where they are. It's just a little bit of movement at the top with some of the top teams. But what do you think?
I would agree. Again, I'm pressing too many buttons. My question is: Northwood's 1, Chatham Central's 2. Are we talking boys or girls? We're talking boys.
Talking boys. Yep.
Yes. Okay. The big game is coming up when Northwood goes to Chatham Central. All right. I don't see any other movement going on between now and the end of the season. If Chatham Central beats Northwood, now Northwood's already beat Chatham Central. How much does Chatham Central have to beat Northwood by, in your mind, for them to take over the number 1 spot?
Well, take over the number 1 spot, that's tricky because we know there is a good chance that these two teams are probably going to see each other. Well, could see each other again in the conference tournament at the end there. I think if Chatham Central wins this one, I don't think they have to win by a certain amount. I think if they get the win and show that they can beat Northwood, they deserve the number 1 spot for now, because we've seen Chatham Central has been the closest team to knocking off Northwood outside of Southeast Alamance at one time. But So, I mean, Central, it was a back and forth game. They even had a lead over Northwood at Northwood. Just really had them on their heels. It's just Northwood is really talented, right? Cam Fowler, Chad Graves, those two guys are pretty much undeniable in those situations. And when Northwood needs a bucket, they could rely on those two guys. So I think, with Chatham Central winning that game on the 11th, I think is the day that's coming up. I think that puts them even for now, and then we'll have to wait to see if they get another chance in the conference tournament. But yeah, I think it will shake some things up.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably going to be the best game coming up because both you and I felt that after that game at Northwood, Chatham Central felt that they could have won that game. It was that close of a game, and the Northwood players, they came through, and they're going to have to come through again because they're playing at Chatham Central. Chatham Central's gym will be full of Chatham Central fans, so it's not going to be an easy one for Northwood, and probably one of the better games coming up.
And I'll add one thing for the boys' discussion as well. I mean, Seaforth with Chatham Central on that end is kind of any given night. As we've seen just last week, Seaforth actually felt like they were going to win that game at home over Chatham Central. Of course, gave it away at the end with Chatham Central coming back and make some clutch baskets and get some stops. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be – it could be even a shakeup there between 2 and 3. We'll never know, especially when that conference tournament comes around and teams are trying to pick up some more wins before seeding for the state tournament.
Yeah, you and I talked to Coach Berry about that Chatham Central game, and he kind of felt that fourth quarter got away from him. So I don't think he's going to let that happen again. So, but they've already played twice. All right. Do you want to talk about girls now?
Yeah, so our girls scores from this week, once again, a pretty good week for the girls teams as well. We had Seaforth getting a big win over Northmore, 49-10. Northwood beating Graham, 59-23. Our Jordan Matthews girls did lose to Eastern Randolph, 43-34 last night. But also Chatham Central, once again, got 2 big wins over Cummings, 50-21. Carolee Dotson, 15 points, 12 rebounds. And then they get South Davidson, where the Bears won 61-37. She went off again for 23 points and 17 rebounds. And if you guys remember, we talked with Coach Adrian Albright about Carolee Dotson and his team. And yeah, Carolee can really rebound the basketball. And Chatham Charter, they did lose to Triangle Math and Science, 38-25. And also Clever Garden School this week. So 2 losses for the Knights, 32-24 in that one. And then Woods Charter, they got a good win over Southern Wake Academy, 51-30. Wesley Oliver, who we'll be talking about later in the stream, she went off for 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. So she was all over the place in that one. And then Woods Charter got the second win in a row this week against Ascend Leadership, 42-32 as well. So, like we say, great week for our county teams overall in the basketball world. And for the week of January 27th power rankings, once again, from last week's scores that we talked about in last week's stream, we have it at Jordan Matthews at 6, Woods Charter at 5, Chatham Charter at 4, Chatham Central at 3, Northwood at 2, and Seaforth at 1 for our power rankings in the country. I mean, in the county, excuse me. So, yeah, not the country.
We'll be in the country. So again, I totally agree with it. You and I have seen a bunch of these games, and it's towards that end of the season when things kind of solidify. Do you see any shakeup happening at all in this? I mean, Seaforth's just in a league of its own.
Yeah, so that brings up also the big game this week is tomorrow when Seaforth hosts Southeast Alamance for their senior night. Of course, for the girls matchup, I think that's going to be a battle for first place in the Mid-Carolina 1A, 2A conference. So definitely will be a big game because Seaforth was pushed to the brink by Southeast Alamance that first time at Southeast. They ended up winning that one at the end. And this time, we know Southeast is a really good team. They've beat up on some of our county teams this year. And it's really just been those two at the top in the running for the conference. So we'll get them Friday night. We'll probably get them again in the coming week with the conference tournament final. So yeah, and I don't think there's going to be much of a shakeup, especially with the way Seaforth's been playing.
All right. And with that, it's time to get into what you have coming out in the Chatham News and Record newspaper that comes out on Thursday. So, what do you got in there this week?
Yeah, so we got a normal roundup with basketball scores and some updates from swimming and indoor track as those two sports get into the end of their postseasons. And then we also have stories from Northwood and Seaforth boys and girls basketball, more details from what happened in the Battle of the Borough from last week. And then did a story just kind of tracking some of our 1,000-point scores, highlighting some of the ones that did get it this year, including Carolee Dodson, who got it recently, Bo Harvey earlier in January, and then Peyton Collins from Seaforth also hitting it earlier this year. There's some more kids that could possibly hit 1,000 points this year. Some other milestones as well that I was looking at, and so you can read more about that in that story as well. And then we also have a story, of course, from Seaforth's first and second round dual team wrestling matches, and they won big over South Lenore and took care of business also against North Pitt. So 2 big wins for them. Of course, now they're going to be wrestling in the dual team state championship on Saturday, and I'll have a story out next week about what happens then.
All right. Who is your athlete of the week?
Yeah, athlete of the week. And like I said, we'll be talking about her later on in the stream. Wesley Oliver from the Woods Charter girls basketball team. She earns the athlete of the week for the week of January 27. Just for how well she's been playing for the Wolves and filling up the stat sheet night in and night out. She recorded back-to-back 24-point games in the wins over Ascend Leadership and Discovery Charter last week. And in that 1-point win over Discovery Charter, she also had a team high 11 steals. So she's doing it on both ends on the court. So yeah, this season she's averaging 16.4 points per game. Like we said, doing her thing on the defensive end as well with 5.3 steals per night. And I think this is now the Wolves' most wins since the 2021-22 season. At the time I wrote this last week, so she's helping lead her program, her team, to a really good season. And yeah, she deserves her recognition. Woods Charter deserves their recognition for that. So congratulations to Wesley Oliver and the Wolves.
All right, and I know let's talk about swimming and indoor track. I know there's some competition coming out, I believe, statewide this weekend. But what's going on with swimming and indoor track here in Chatham County?
Yeah, so indoor track state championships will be next week at the end of the week. I think February 14th is when our 1A, 2A schools will be competing. But this weekend, we'll have our 1A, 2A schools. Actually, I think tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have some athletes competing in the swimming state championships. Let me make sure I get that date right, from 2/7 to 8. Yeah, I think it's tomorrow. They'll be competing at Pine Forest High School. And just to rattle off our county competitors, interstate championships for swimming from Woods Charter, we'll have Daisy Collins, Drew White. Excuse me if I'm saying his name incorrectly. I apologize. Yevgeny Podliansky. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And Derek White from Woods Charter. And Chatham Central, Jesse Escalin. Northwood, they'll have Abigail Emmerich, Holly Thesing, and Jesse Sykes. And then Seaforth, plenty of names from the Hawks. Jillian Erickson, Colton Roberts, Sydney Burley, Sydney Hare, Benjamin LaJoy, Michael Kokas, Eva Wahib, and Evan Hepburn will all be competing from Chatham County in the swimming state championships tomorrow.
All right, folks. So go out, pick up a copy of the Chatham News and Record newspaper, read Ashibo's stuff. It's out there. And the other thing, too, is we ran into a parent at the Northwood game, which they mentioned their daughter is playing in college. And Ashibo did an article a few weeks ago on Chatham County athletes who are playing in college. And he said, hey, I appreciate you being able to do that. So Ashibo's doing a nice job keeping track of some of the folks that were stars here in Chatham County that have continued playing in the college level. So again, you can find that when you pick up the newspaper. All right. follow Ashibo on X at AshiboR38 and also ChathamNC Sports. And where are we going this week? I know I'm going to be at the Northwood basketball game tonight taking pictures, and we're both going to be at the Seaforth game tomorrow, aren't we?
Yes, I will be at Seaforth tomorrow for the games against Southeast Alamance. And also one more thing, I did misspeak. The swimming state championships for 1A, 2A will be Saturday, February 8th at Pine Forest High School. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and I know some of the Chatham County swimmers are going to be there because I was talking with Jared yesterday at Seaforth, and he mentioned the fact that you've got both wrestling and swimming going on the same day, and they're trying to split responsibilities as to who's going to be going to which one of those events. Because, again, we want to show some love to these swimmers here in Chatham County as well. So, and again, wrestling on Saturday. Are you going to? I can't make that. I think I dropped PJ a note that he may be the one taking pictures on Saturday at wrestling, and you're going to be out there on Saturday?
Yep, I will be there on Saturday covering the dual championships at 3. And then, of course, for the next week on Tuesday, I do plan on being at Chatham Central for that big game between Chatham Central and Northwood. So, yep, that's what we have.
All right. Anything else before we wrap it up?
Nope, I think we got it all covered for the week.
All right. And again, folks, I'm going to pop this up because Ashibo's number of followers that he has continues to grow on X. That's him, Ashibo R38. You'll also notice not only is he giving you sports news and updates as to scores, but he also does post-game interviews with players and coaches. So definitely worth a follow. Ashibo's got a fantastic talent stack. Not only does he write and put in the paper, but he does this live stream, and you can also follow him on X. So lots of stuff going on in Chatham County sports, and Ashibo's the person to follow. All right. With that, I guess we're going to end up the stream. I don't know who I think I know who our special guest is for next Thursday, but we can't tell you yet. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good weekend. I'll see you maybe at the Northwood game if you're out there, and we'll both be out at Seaforth tomorrow for that big game with Southeast Alamance, both the girls and the boys teams.